This might be the biggest offseason in Washington in the last 30 years. A new owner, they fired their offensive coordinator, and might actually have a quarterback. So what's next for the Burgundy and Gold? Like and subscribe, and let's get into it. I won't delay the top topic in our nation's capital. Dan Snyder is likely selling the team. They've officially taken bids, and it sounds like they're topping $7 billion in some cases. When you have a name like Jeff Bezos tied to the team, people are going to crack open their checkbooks. So what does a new owner actually mean? In a lot of cities and for a lot of organizations, you might not feel the difference immediately, if ever really. But for the Commanders, this team has been desperate for a new organizational leadership since the day Dan Snyder took over in 1999. He has made terrible hires, free agent signings, and draft picks, and that's just on the football side of things. There's also been the numerous highly publicized scandals that have ravaged the organization over the last 20 years, leading to a name change, multiple lawsuits, non-disclosure agreements, and now the probable selling of the team. If the Snyders truly sell the entirety of the team to a new ownership group, it will be felt throughout the league immediately for several reasons. First, the new owner will be able to more quickly work together with the local governments to get the go-ahead and funding for a new stadium that is desperately needed. Second, they'll hopefully keep the team out of the headlines for non-football related incidents. The amount of distractions the players and staff have had to put up with has no doubt affected the play on the field. Lastly, Dan Snyder notoriously stuck his nose in the football operations when he had no idea what he was doing. Overspending on aging former stars, drafting a quarterback because they played at your son's high school, sending draft picks for a quarterback that flamed out in their last two cities, the list goes on and on. This is the hardest thing to predict because of the politics that go into deciding the next owner. It's not all about the bid. But let's say Jeff Bezos is the new owner of the Commanders. I think he won't be afraid to spend for what's best for the business, and winning is what's best for business. So let's talk about the offensive coordinator position. Scott Turner was fired after his offense failed to be in the top 20 in points scored during any of his 3 seasons at the position. I know there have been 8 different starting quarterbacks, none of which have been great, but it just felt like Scott was getting creative for the sake of being creative and calling plays that made no sense with the way the games were going. Calling numerous spread plays in shotgun while at the goal line when the entire identity of the team during their win streak was to run the ball. Giving the ball to Brian Robinson 21 times one week, then when he's averaging 7.4 yards per carry against the Giants, you only give it to him 12 times. His time had definitely run out in Washington, and while he wasn't the sole reason for the offense underperforming, offensive line and poor QB play being culprits as well, he just wasn't getting the job done. So who will be the next OC? There are tons of names being thrown around, so I'll just talk about 3. A likely choice who might not get the fan base excited, a possible choice who I think people will be happy with, and a long shot who I have seen all over Twitter. So the likely choice would be Mike Shula. He was the offensive coordinator for Ron in Carolina when Cam Newton had his most successful years. We all know Ron loves his Carolina guys, and Shula would be just the next one in line. He's currently an offensive assistant in Buffalo, so it would be easy to get permission to interview him. I don't think he'd dramatically improve anything in Washington, but he's a professional and would be fine as long as there's a solid run game and a mobile quarterback. The middle of the road name that I want to talk about is a young guy whose head coach might be leaving, so he'll be looking for work. Thomas Brown is an assistant head coach and tight end coach for the Rams. He's learned under McVay, which makes you an immediately attractive candidate. He would satisfy the fans who purely just want a young guy, but he also has been a part of a Super Bowl champion, so that would inject some more excitement into this team and fan base. Lastly, the long shot, Eric Bieniemy. I get it. He doesn't get to call plays in Kansas City, and that could be holding him back from getting a head coaching job. So give him 1 year to come in and make Washington a high-flying offensive team, then give him the head coach job when new ownership inevitably fires Ron after 1 more season. It's a great story, I just don't think it has a happy ending for the Commanders. He'll have options if he ever decides to leave, and he will probably choose one that has an extremely high draft pick where he can get his quarterback, or he'll go somewhere that already has a top quarterback in place. So speaking of quarterbacks, who's next in the long line of quarterbacks for Washington? Sam Howell played really well in his only start. He threw for a touchdown on his first ever NFL pass and ran for one as well. He had a 58% completion percentage, but only threw the ball 19 times. There was one boneheaded interception, but that's what you get from a 5th round rookie who hasn't been given meaningful practice snaps all season. I say all that to say, I don't know if he'll be the guy, but I think he's earned the right to truly compete for the job in camp. The only way he doesn't get that opportunity is if the team trades assets for another veteran quarterback like Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, or Lamar Jackson. Of those 3, the only one I see possibly ending up in DC is Derek Carr. He's the only one so far who is 100% available and will cost the least of the 3 to acquire. I personally, as a fan, wouldn't want him. I think he's better than Wentz, but I'd rather save the $40 million it costs to have him and spend it on keeping Daron Payne and building an offensive line. The only other quarterback option would be to draft one. They can move up if they love a guy, or wait at 16, or pick one later in the draft. Nothing wrong with grabbing a day 2 QB and letting him and Howell battle it out. I'd personally love to see it. So it's a big time offseason for my favorite team. Let me know your dream scenario of owner, offensive coordinator, and quarterback down in the comments. If I had to pick right now, I think I'd go with Bezos because he could buy a stadium tomorrow, Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach in Philly, to be our offensive coordinator, and I'd roll the dice on Sam Howell. But that's going to do it. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.